Hey, Lois is first. Then Teresa Trummel, Furn, you are the first three. Hello, Killer. Kill Irp. Mark is back. Mark's here.
I'm back.
He's back. Check this out. It's a western remix of Harry Potter. There isn't enough town in there isn't enough room in this town for two wizards, Harry. Who you got here? Crocodile, Kenton, Harry Potter Addict is here too. Awesome. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Conk's Corner with John Reedsley, aka me, John Voth. Mark is back. He was gone for 2 days, but he's back, and Dexter is here. This is a time where I read Harry Potter for an hour. We got through the first two books. Now we're on to the third one. We got pretty good progress here. Unfortunately, I don't know why, but today it's all orange. Like when I go closer, it's regular colors, and when I go away, it's orange. I think it might be maybe the shirt is throwing it off. Maybe I should change it to something else, something more appropriate.
Do it naked.
So I've never read the books before. I've only seen 2 or 3 of the movies. Don't remember much from them at all. I read through all the comments, so please, that means no spoilers, no hints, no nothing about what's coming up. Everybody's telling me this is their favorite book, so I'm quite excited to read this one. I leave a Q&A at the end, a little interaction session between me and you. I save all of these on YouTube, so if you want to catch up, go into the link in my bio to catch up. And we're going to clap for the nurses at 7. So I don't really need to give you a summary other than Kenton. I said Kenton because I saw his name on here. Because Harry Potter went to Hogwarts twice, 2 years in a row, a lot of shenanigans. He had to semi-fight Voldemort both times, not the full form of Voldemort. I'm going to turn this Western off here. There we go. And we're going to see the third year now. Further shenanigans. I miss you too, Kenton. Okay. Oh, I forgot one thing. I'm going to say this every single time before I start. You have value, you have meaning, and you are loved. Because some people are spending all this time on their own, and sometimes it's hard to remember that. Okay, chapter 1. Owl Post. Harry Potter was a highly unusual boy in many ways. For one thing, he hated the summer holidays more than any other time of the year. For another, he really wanted to do his homework, but was forced to do it in secret, in the dead of night. And he also happened to be a wizard. What? We didn't know that. A twist at the start of the book? It was nearly midnight, and he was lying on his front in bed, the blankets drawn right over his head like a tent, a torch in one hand, and a large leather-bound book, A History of Magic by Adalbert Waffling, propped open against the window. Harry moved the tip of his eagle feather quill down the page, frowning as he looked for something that would help him write his essay, which, burning in the 14th century, was completely pointless. Discuss. The quill paused at the top of a likely-looking paragraph. Harry pushed his round glasses up his nose, moved his torch closer to the book, and read. Non-magic people, more commonly known as muggles, were particularly afraid of magic in medieval times, but not very good at recognizing it. On the rare occasion that they did catch a real witch or wizard, burning had no effect whatsoever. The witch or wizard would perform a basic flame-freezing charm and then pretend to shriek with pain while enjoying a gentle tickling sensation. Oh, that's a funny... I'm going to think of that every single time I read anything in history books about witch burning. It's like, she's enjoying it. Indeed, Gwendolyn the Weird enjoyed being burned so much that she allowed herself to be caught no fewer than 47 times in various disguises. Oh, that's funny. Harry put his quill between his teeth and reached underneath his pillow for his ink bottle and a roll of parchment. Slowly and very carefully, he unscrewed the ink bottle, dipped his quill into it, and began to write, pausing every now and then to listen. Because if any of the Dursleys heard the scratching of his quill on their way to the bathroom, he'd probably find himself locked in the cupboard under the stairs for the rest of the summer. The Dursley family of number 4, Privet Drive, was the reason that Harry never enjoyed his summer holidays. Uncle Vernon, Aunt Petunia, and their son, Dudley, were Harry's only living relatives. They were muggles, and they had a very medieval attitude towards magic. Harry's dead parents, who had been a witch and wizard themselves, were never mentioned under the Dursleys' roof. For years, Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon had hoped that if they kept Harry as downtrodden as possible, they would be able to squash the magic out of him. To their fury, they had been unsuccessful, and now lived in terror of anyone finding out that Harry spent most of the last 2 years at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The most the Dursleys could do these days was to lock away Harry's spoolbecks, spell books, wand, cauldron, and broomstick at the start of the summer holiday, and forbid him to talk to the neighbors. So this is like the 5 minutes before the TV show starts. It's this is what happened previously. This separation from his spell books had been a real problem for Harry, because his teachers at Hogwarts had given him a lot of holiday work. One of the essays, a particularly nasty one about shrinking potions, was for Harry's least favorite teacher, Professor Snape, who I sometimes call Snoop, who would be delighted to have an excuse to give Harry detention for a month. Harry had therefore seized his chance in the first week of the holidays. Whilst Uncle Vernon and Petunia and Dudley had gone out into the front garden to admire Uncle Vernon's new company car in very loud voices so that the rest of the street would notice it too, Harry had crept downstairs, picked the lock on the cupboard under the stairs, grabbed some of his books, and hidden them in his bedroom. As long as he didn't leave spots of ink on the sheets, the Dursleys need never know that he was studying magic by night. Harry was keen to avoid trouble with his aunt and uncle at the moment, as they were already in a bad mood with him, all because he'd received a telephone call from a fellow wizard one week into the school holidays. Ron Weasley, who was one of Harry's best friends at Hogwarts, came from a whole family of wizards. This meant that he knew a lot of things. Harry didn't, but had never used a telephone before. A lot of things Harry didn't, but never used a telephone before. Most unluckily, it had been Uncle Vernon who had answered the call. Vernon Dursley speaking. Harry, who happened to be in the room at the time, froze as he heard Ron's voice answer. Hello! Wait, no, it's Ron yelling. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? I want to talk to Harry Potter. Ron was yelling so loudly that Uncle Vernon jumped and held the receiver a foot away from his ear, staring at it with an expression of mingled fury and alarm. Who is this? He roared in the direction of the mouthpiece. Who are you? Ron Weasley, Ron bellowed back, as though he and Uncle Vernon were speaking from opposite ends of a football pitch. I'm a friend of Harry's from school. Uncle Vernon's small eyes swiveled around to Harry, who was rooted to the spot. There is no Harry Potter here, he roared, now holding the receiver at arm's length, as though frightened it might explode. I don't know what school you're talking about. Never contact me again. Don't you come near my family. And he threw the receiver back onto the telephone as if dropping a poisonous spider. The row that had followed had been one of the worst ever. How dare you give this number to people like you? Uncle Vernon had roared, spraying Harry with spit. Angrier, roared. I guess I have to go louder than that. Okay. Well, there's not much shouting left, so sorry. Ron obviously realized that he'd got Harry into trouble because he hadn't called again. Harry's other best friend from Hogwarts, Hermione Granger, hadn't been in touch either. Harry suspected that Ron had warned Hermione not to call, which was a pity because Hermione, the cleverest witch in Harry's year, had Muggle parents, knew perfectly well how to use a telephone, and would probably have had enough sense not to say that she went to Hogwarts. So Harry had had no word from any of his wizarding friends for 5 long weeks, just like last time. And this summer was turning out to be almost as bad as the last one. There was just one very small improvement. After swearing that he wouldn't use her to send letters to any of his friends, Harry had been allowed to let his owl, Hedwig, out at night. Uncle Vernon had given in because of the racket Hedwig made if she was locked in her cage. Let's turn it down. In her cage all the time. Harry finished writing about Gwendolen the Weird and paused to listen again. The silence in the dark house was broken only by the distant, grunting snores of his enormous cousin, Dudley. It must be very late. Harry's eyes were itching with tiredness. Perhaps he'd finish this essay tomorrow night. Well, welcome, Tilly and Sherry. He replaced the top of the ink bottle, pulled an old pillowcase from under his bed, put the torch, a history of magic, his essay, quill, and ink inside it, got out of bed, and hid the lot under a loose floorboard under his bed. And then he stood up, stretched, and checked the time on the luminous alarm clock on his bedside table. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. Harry's stomach gave a funny jolt. He had been 13 years old, without realizing, for a whole hour. Oh, it's his birthday again. Of course, yeah, every single time he's home, he gets his birthday. Okay, gotcha. So I'm guessing they're going to go through into his birthday every single book and into Christmas every single book. Because it changes the scenery a little bit at Hogwarts. Got a shout out. Yet another unusual thing about Harry was how little he looked forward to his birthdays. He had never received a birthday card in his life. The Dursleys had completely ignored his last 2 birthdays, and he had no reason to suppose they would remember this one. Harry walked across the dark room, past Hedwig's large, empty cage, to the open window. He leaned on the sill, the cool night air pleasant on his face after a long time under the blankets. Hedwig had been absent for 2 nights now. Harry wasn't worried about her. She'd been gone this long before, but he hoped she'd be back soon. She was the only living creature in this house who didn't flinch at the sight of him. Harry, though still rather small and skinny for his age, had grown a few inches over the last year. His jet-black hair, however, was just as it had always been, stubbornly untidy, whatever he did to it. The eyes behind his glasses were bright green, and on his forehead, clearly visible through his hair, was a thin scar shaped like a bolt of lightning. This is probably good for anybody who's actually jumping in on these streams, because this is all, it's a couple pages of stuff we already know. So she was just trying to get new readership in, just in case they picked up that 3rd book and were like, I don't know what's going on. It's all explained at the beginning. It's actually pretty clever. Of all the unusual things about Harry, this scar was the most extraordinary of all. It was not, as the Dursleys had pretended for 10 years, a souvenir of the car crash that had killed Harry's parents, because Lily and James Potter had not died in a car crash. They had been murdered. Murdered by the most feared dark wizard for 100 years, Lord Voldemort. Harry had escaped from the same attack with nothing more than a scar on his forehead, when Voldemort's curse, instead of killing him, had rebounded upon its originator. Barely alive, Voldemort had fled. But Harry had come face to face with him since at Hogwarts. Remembering their last meeting as he stood at the dark window, Harry had to admit that he was lucky even to have reached his 13th birthday. 30th. He's still standing there. I was about to play him super old, but I was like, I'm 33. Can't wait to get back to Hogwarts. He scanned the starry sky for a sign of Hedwig, perhaps soaring back to him with a dead mouse dangling from her beak, expecting praise. Gazing absently over the rooftops, it was a few seconds before Harry realized what he was seeing. Now something's going to happen. We just binged them all, yeah. Okay, something's going to happen here. Silhouetted against the golden moon and growing larger every moment was a large, strangely lopsided creature, and it was flapping in Harry's direction. He stood quite still, watching it sink lower and lower. For a split second, he hesitated, his hand on the window latch, wondering whether to slam it shut. But then the bizarre creature soared over one of the street lamps of Privet Drive, and Harry, realizing what it was, leapt aside. Through the window soared 3 owls, two of them holding up the third, which appeared to be unconscious. They landed with a soft flump on Harry's bed, and the middle owl, which was large and gray, keeled right over and lay motionless. There was a large package tied to its legs. Whoa. Was this just 2 owls delivering an owl who's delivering a package? Nice. Harry recognized the unconscious owl at once. His name was Errol, and he belonged to the Weasley family. Harry dashed to the bed at once, untied the cords around Errol's legs, took off the parcel, and then carried Errol to Hedwig's cage. Errol opened up... It sounds like such a human name. It sounds like Earl. Earl the owl. Hi, y'all, just got an owl. A mouse. Errol opened one bleary eye, gave a feeble hoot of thanks, and began to gulp some water. Harry turned back to the remaining owls. One of them, the large, snowy female, was his own Hedwig. She, too, was carrying a parcel, and looked extremely pleased with herself. She gave Harry an affectionate nip with her beak. As he removed her burden, then flew across the room to join Errol. Harry didn't recognize the third owl, a handsome, tawny one, but he knew at once where it had come from, because, in addition to a third parcel, it was carrying a letter bearing the Hogwarts crest. When Harry relieved this owl of its post, it ruffled its feathers importantly, stretched its wings, and took off through the window into the night. Harry sat down in his bed, grabbed Errol's package, ripped off the brown paper, and discovered a present wrapped in gold, and his first ever birthday card. Fingers trembling slightly, he opened the envelope. 2 pieces of paper fell out, a letter and a newspaper cutting. The cutting had clearly come out of the wizarding newspaper, the Daily Prophet, because the people in black and white pictures were moving. Harry picked up the cutting, smoothed it out, and read, Ministry of Magic Employee Scoops Grand Prize. Arthur Weasley, head of the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts Office at the Ministry of Magic, has won the annual Daily Prophet Grand Prize Galleon Draw. A delighted Mr. Weasley told the Daily Prophet, We will be spending the gold on summer holiday in Egypt, where our eldest son, Bill, works as a curse breaker for Gringotts Wizarding Bank. The Weasley family will be spending a month in Egypt, returning for the start... Oh, I didn't read this in the newspapery voice. Shoot! The Weasley family will be spending a month in Egypt, returning for the start of the new school year at Hogwarts, which 5 of the Weasley children currently attend. I should have done that the whole way through. Harry scanned the moving photograph, and a grin spread across his face as he saw all 9 of the Weasleys waving furiously at him, standing in front of a large pyramid. Plump little Mrs. Weasley, tall, balding Mr. Weasley, 6 sons and 1 daughter, all, though the black and white picture didn't show it, with flaming red hair. Right in the middle of the picture was Ron, tall and gangling, with his pet rat's Scabbers on his shoulder, and his arm around his little sister, Ginny. Harry couldn't think of anyone who deserved to win a large pile of gold more than the Weasleys, who were very nice and extremely poor. He picked up Ron's letter and unfolded it. That's Ron. Dear Harry, happy birthday. Look, I'm really sorry about that telephone call. I hope the Muggles didn't give you a hard time. I asked Dad, and he reckons I shouldn't have shouted. It's brilliant here in Egypt. Bill's taken us all round the tombs, and you wouldn't believe the curses those old Egyptian wizards put on them. Mum wouldn't let Ginny come in the Mum wouldn't let Ginny come in the last one. There were all these mutant skeletons in there, of Muggles who'd broken in and grown extra heads and stuff. I couldn't believe it when Dad won the Daily Prophet draw. 700 galleons! Most of it's gone on this holiday, but they're going to buy me a new one for next year. Harry remembered only too well the occasion when Ron's old wand had snapped. It had happened when the car the 2 of them had been flying to Hogwarts had crashed into a tree in the school grounds. We'll be back about a week before term starts, and we'll be going up to London to get my wand and our new books. Any chance of meeting you there? Don't let the Muggles get you down. Try and come to London. Ron. P.S. Percy's head boy. He got the letter last week. Nathan, that's very true. Harry glanced back at the photograph. Percy, who was in his 7th and final year at Hogwarts, was looking particularly smug. He had pinned his head boy badge to the fez perched jauntily on the top of his neat hair. His horn-rimmed glasses flashing in the Egyptian sun. Harry now turned to his present and unwrapped it. Inside was what looked like a miniature glass spinning top. There was another note from Ron beneath it. This guy's a good friend. He's like writing a letter, then creating a little gift, writing another letter within it. I wonder what the 2 other parcels are going to be. There was another note from Ron beneath it. Harry, this is a pocket sneakoscope. If there's someone untrustworthy around, it's supposed to light up and spin. Bill says it's rubbish sold for wizard tourists and isn't reliable, but because it kept lighting up at dinner last night. But he didn't realize Fred and George had put beetles in his soup. Bye, Ron. So it's just constantly going up around Fred and George. Just constantly. Harry put the pocket sneakoscope on his bedside table, where it stood quite still, balanced on its point, reflecting the luminous hands of his clock. He looked at it happily for a few seconds, then picked up the parcel Hedwig had brought. You know what I'm thinking? This is going to come back at the end of the book. She's so good at looping stuff back and connecting things that I think this is going to be one of the essential items at the very end fight. That's my my proposal for the future. Inside this too, there was a wrapped present, a card and a letter. This time from Hermione. Dear Harry, Ron wrote to me and told me about his phone call to your Uncle Vernon. I do hope you're all right. I'm on holiday in France at the moment, and I didn't know how I was going to send this to you. What if they opened it at customs? But then Hedwig turned up. I think she wanted to make sure you got something for your birthday for a change. I bought your present by owl order. There was an advertisement in the Daily Prophet. I've been getting it delivered. It's so good to keep up with what's going on in the wizarding world. Did you see that picture of Ron and his family a week ago? I bet he's learning loads. I'm really jealous. The ancient Egyptian wizards were fascinating. There was some interesting local history of witchcraft here too. I've rewritten my whole history of magic essay to include some of the things I've found out. She's such a nerd. I love nerds. I'm a nerd myself. She's a different kind of one, but she's a different kind of nerd. My gosh. I hope it's not too long. It's 2 rolls of parchment more than Professor Binns asked for. Ron says he's going to be in London in the last week of the holidays. Can you make it? Will your aunt and uncle let you come? I really hope you can. If not, I'll see you on the Hogwarts Express on September the 1st. Love, from Hermione. P.S. Ron says Percy's head boy. I'll bet Percy's really pleased. Ron doesn't seem too happy about it. Harry laughed again as he put Hermione's letter aside and picked up her present. It was very heavy. Knowing Hermione, he was sure it would be a large book full of very difficult spells. But it wasn't. His heart gave a huge bound as he ripped back the paper and saw a sleek black leather case with silver words stamped across it. Broomstick servicing kit. Oh, it's like an actual bike. You have to service your broom. Oh, the love was Love, not Luv. That would be completely different. That would mean something different. Nice catch, Nathan. Wow, Hermione, Harry whispered, unzipping the case to look inside. There was a large jar of Fleetwood's high-finish handle polish, a pair of gleaming silver tail twig clippers, a tiny brass compass to clip onto your broom for long journeys, and a handbook of do-it-yourself broom care. Apart from his friends, the thing that Harry missed most about Hogwarts was Quidditch, the most popular sport in the magical world. Highly dangerous, very exciting, and played on broomsticks. Harry happened to be a very good Quidditch player. He had been the youngest person in a century to be picked for one of the Hogwarts house teams. One of Harry's most prized possessions was his Nimbus 2000 racing broom. Harry put the leather case aside and picked up his last parcel. He recognized the untidy scrawl on the brown paper at once. This was from Hagrid, the Hogwarts gamekeeper. He tore off the top layer of paper and glimpsed something green and leathery. But before he could unwrap it properly, the parcel gave a strange quiver. and whatever it was inside snapped loudly, as though it had jaws. Harry froze. He knew that Hagrid would never send him anything dangerous on purpose, but then Hagrid didn't have a normal person's view of what was dangerous. Very, very true. And also, a lot of things are not as dangerous to him as they are for regular humans. Like giant, ginormous elephant-sized spiders. Man, oh man. Hagrid had been known to befriend giant spiders. There you go. But I could have written these books. Yeah. Like me and Rowling, we think the same. Book finished. Okay. Hagrid had been known to befriend giant spiders, buy vicious, three-headed dogs from men in pubs, and sneak illegal dragon eggs into his cabin. Harry poked the parcel nervously. It snapped loudly again. Harry reached for the lamp on his bedside table, gripped it firmly in one hand, and raised it over his head, ready to strike. Then he seized the rest of the wrapping paper into his hand and pulled, and out fell a book. Harry had just time to register its handsome green cover, emblazoned with the golden title, The Monster Book of Monsters, before it flipped onto its edge and scuttled sideways along the bed like some weird crab. Okay, this is going to be a great little running thing, I hope, throughout this book, is this book that just keeps on running away from him. Uh-oh, Harry muttered. The book toppled off the bed with a loud clunk and shuffled rapidly across the room. Harry followed it stealthily. The book was hiding in the dark space under his desk. Praying that the Dursleys were still fast asleep, Harry got down on his hands and knees and reached towards it. Ouch! The book snapped shut on his hand and then flapped past him, still scuttling on its cover. I hope it's making noises. Harry scrambled around, threw himself forward, and managed to flatten it. Uncle Vernon gave a loud, sleepy grunt in the next room next door. Hedwig and Errol watched interestedly, as Harry clamped the struggling book tightly in his arms, hurried to his chest of drawers, and pulled out a belt, which he buckled tightly around it. The monster book shuddered angrily, but could no longer flap and snap. So Harry threw it down on the bed and reached for Hagrid's card. Monster book, yeah. Hagrid.
Dear Harry, happy birthday. Think you might find this useful for next year. Won't say no more here. Tell you when I see you. Hope the muggles are treating you right. All the best, Hagrid.
It struck Harry as ominous that Hagrid thought a biting book would come in useful, but he put up Hagrid's card next to Ron and Hermione's, grinning more broadly than ever. Now there was only the letter from Hogwarts left. Noticing that it was rather thicker than usual, Harry slit open the envelope, pulled out the first page of parchment within, and read. Okay, who wrote this? McGonagall. Dear Mr. Potter, please note that the new school year will begin on September the 1st. The Hogwarts Express will leave from King's Cross Station, platform 9 3/4, at 11 o'clock. Third years are permitted to visit the village of Hogsmeade at certain weekends. Please give the enclosed permission form to your parents or guardian to sign. A list of books for next year is enclosed. Yours sincerely, Professor M. McGonagall. I think I should pitch her be a bit more sharp with her voice. Yeah, something like that. Hagrid voice is my favorite voice. Thank you very much. I hope he's more in these books in this book than the second one, because it was a ton in the first one, a little bit in the second one. I love having him around, so I hope he's back in this one a lot. Don't tell me if he is. I don't want to know. I just want to, yeah. Harry pulled out the Hogsmeade permission form and looked at it, no longer grinning. It would be wonderful to visit Hogsmeade at weekends. He knew it was an entirely wizarding village. Oh, cool. And he had never set foot there. But how on earth was he going to persuade Uncle Vernon or Aunt Petunia to sign the form? He looked over at the alarm clock. It was now 2 o'clock in the morning. Deciding that he'd worry about the Hogsmeade form when he woke up, Harry got back into bed and reached up to cross off another day on the chart he'd made for himself. counting down the days left until his return to Hogwarts. Then he took off his glasses and lay down, eyes open, facing his 3 birthday cards. Extremely unusual though he was, at that moment, Harry Potter felt just like everyone else did, glad, for the first time in his life, that it was his birthday. Oh, that's very sweet. Very sweet, friends. Very sweet opening. And, yeah, different first chapter. It wasn't all about the Dursleys making his life hell. It was just about him being happy. I like that. It's good. Sharper will be the difference between teacher and Mrs. Doubtfire. Okay, gotcha. Chapter 2. Aunt Marge's Big Mistake. Harry went down to breakfast next morning to find the 3 Dursleys already sitting around the kitchen table. They were watching a brand new television, a welcome home for the summer present for Dudley, who had been complaining loudly about the long walk between the fridge and the television in the living room. I love how, like, what she does great is there's most of the characters are really fleshed out and 3-dimensional, but she has certain characters who are caricatures, and I love that she does like these. At least not now. These 3 characters don't have much depth. It's just how far can I push the joke with them? Like she's just pushing another element of that joke, or same with Lockhart. For me, right now, he's still been a caricature, and they just pushed how far can I make his fairness and grandeur go. Okay. Dudley had spent most of the summer in the kitchen, his piggy little eyes fixed on the screen, and his 5 chins wobbling as he ate continuously. Harry sat down between Dudley and Uncle Vernon, a large, beefy man with very little neck and a lot of mustache. Far from wishing Harry a happy birthday, none of the Dursleys gave any sign that they had noticed Harry enter the room, but Harry was far too used to this to care. He helped himself to a piece of toast, and then looked up at the newsreader on the television, who was halfway through a report on an escaped convict. The public is warned that Black is armed and extremely dangerous. A special hotline has been set up, and any sighting of Black should be reported immediately.
No need to tell us he's no good,
snorted Uncle Vernon, staring over the top of his newspaper at the prisoner.
Look at the state of him, the filthy layabout. Look at his hair.
He shot a nasty look sideways at Harry, whose untidy hair had always been a source of great annoyance to Uncle Vernon. Compared to the man on the television, however, whose gaunt face was surrounded by a matted, elbow-length tangle, Harry felt very well-groomed indeed. The newsreader had appeared.
The Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries will announce today... Hang on!
Barked Uncle Vernon, staring furiously at the newsreader.
You didn't tell us where that maniac's escaped from. What use is that? Lunatic could be coming up the street right now.
Aunt Petunia... I think I gotta change his voice a little bit. Anyway, Aunt Petunia, who was boned and horse-faced every time she's like, bony and horse-faced. Just don't forget that. Whipped around and peered intently out of the kitchen window. Harry knew Aunt Petunia would simply love to be the one to call the hotline number. She was the nosiest woman in the world and spent most of her life spying on her boring, law-abiding neighbors.
When will they learn?
Said Uncle Vernon, pounding the table with his large purple fist.
That hanging's the only way to deal with these people.
Very true. Very true.
Something like that, yeah.
Very true,
said Aunt Petunia, who was still Oh, she's more Cockney too.
Very true. Very true,
said Aunt Petunia, who was still squinting into next door's runner beans. Uncle Vernon drained his teacup, glanced at his watch. I thought that's what it was. This is my getting ready for Uncle Vernon. So, quite husky, it's pretty good. Uncle Vernon drained his teacup, glanced at his watch, and added,
I'd better be off in a minute, Petunia. Marge's train gets in at 10.
Harry, whose thoughts had been upstairs with a broomstick servicing kit, was brought back to earth with an unpleasant bump. What? Who's he saying? Harry, whose thoughts have been upstairs. Oh, right.
Aunt Marge,
He blurted out.
she's not coming here. Is she?
Aunt Marge was Uncle Vernon's sister. Even though she was not a blood relative of Harry's, whose mother had been Aunt Petunia's sister, he'd been forced to call her Aunt all his life. Aunt Marge lived in the country, in a house with a large garden, where she bred bulldogs. Woo! She didn't often stay in Privet Drive because she couldn't bear to leave her precious dogs, but each of her visits stood out horribly vividly in Harry's mind. Give me some adjectives for Aunt Marge, because she's gonna be speaking at some point. How would you describe her? At Dudley's 5th birthday party, Aunt Marge had whacked Harry around the shins with her walking stick to stop him beating Dudley at musical statues. A few years later, she had turned up at Christmas with a computerized robot for Dudley and a box of dog biscuits for Harry. Oh my gosh. On her last visit, the year before Harry had started at Hogwarts, Harry had accidentally trodden on the paw of her favorite dog. Ripper had chased Harry out into the garden and up a tree, and Aunt Marge had refused to call him off until past midnight. The memory of this incident still brought tears of laughter to Dudley's eyes. Why? To Dudley. I thought they said to Harry. So I was like, why would he be laughing about this? The masochist. Okay, loud, abrasive, judgmental, very, very fat and obnoxious. Trunchbull indeed.
Female version of Vernon.
Female version of Vernon. Okay, gotcha.
Marge will be here for a week, Uncle Vernon snarled. And while we're on the subject,
He pointed a fat finger threateningly at Harry.
we need to get a few things straight before I go and collect her.
Dudley smirked and withdrew his gaze from the television. Watching Harry being bullied by Uncle Vernon was Dudley's favorite form of entertainment.
Firstly,
Growled Uncle Vernon.
you'll keep a civil tongue in your head when you're talking to Marge.
All right, said Harry bitterly. If she does when she's talking to me,
Secondly,
said Uncle Vernon, acting as though he had not heard Harry's reply.
as Marge doesn't
Oh, yeah, I'm going to do it like breathing heavy, too.
As Marge doesn't know anything about your abnormality, I don't want any funny stuff while she's here. You behave yourself. Got me?
I will if she does, said Harry through gritted teeth.
And thirdly,
Said Uncle Vernon, his mean little eyes. Oh, gosh, no. It's going to be a wealth of fun. His mean little eyes now slits in his great purple face.
we told
He's such a hard breather. He's gasping for air constantly.
as Marge doesn't know anything about your...
Oh, no, wait, sorry.
And thirdly,
Said Uncle Vernon, his mean little eyes now slits in his great purple face.
we told Marge you attend St. Brutus's secure centre for incurably
Criminal boys. Sorry. Oh, no. For incurably criminal boys. What? Harry yelled.
And you'll be sticking to that story, boy, or there'll be trouble.
Spat, Uncle Vernon. I'm actually a little dizzy right now. Whoa. I was a bit dizzy there. Okay. Harry sat there, white-faced and furious, staring at Uncle Vernon, hardly able to believe it. Aunt Marge coming for a week-long visit. It was the worst birthday present the Dursleys had ever given him, including that pair of Uncle Vernon's old socks.
Well, Petunia,
Said Uncle Vernon, getting heavily to his feet.
I'll be off to the station then. Want to come along for the ride, Dudders?
No, said Dudley. Said Dudley, whose attention had returned to the television, now that Uncle Vernon had finished threatening Harry. Who was this saying? Aunt Petunia.
Dudley's got to make himself smart for his auntie,
Said Aunt Petunia, smoothing Dudley's thick blonde hair. Mummy's brought...
Mummy's bought him a lovely new bow tie.
Uncle Vernon clapped Dudley on his porky shoulder. on the verge of dying. Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh. Oh, this is gonna make me laugh so much. Oh man.
See you in a bit then,
He said, and he left the kitchen. Oh, I can't. Oh my gosh. Harry, who had been sitting in a kind of horrified trance, had a sudden idea. Abandoning his toast, he got quickly to his feet and followed Uncle Vernon to the front door. Stop with the vodka in the mug. There is no vodka in that mug. Uncle Vernon was pulling on his car coat.
I'm not taking you.
He snarled as he turned to see Harry watching him. Like I'd wanted to come, said Harry coldly. I want to ask you something. Uncle Vernon eyed him suspiciously. I keep on wanting to prepare with that voice now. 3rd years at Hogg. At my school, are allowed to visit the village sometimes, said Harry.
So?
Snapped Uncle Vernon, taking his car keys from a hook right next to the door. I need you to sign the permission form, said Harry in a rush.
And why should I do that?
Sneered Uncle Vernon. Well, said Harry, choosing his words carefully, it'll be hard work, pretending to Aunt Marge I go to that St. What's-its...
St. Bruce's Secure Centre for Incurably Criminal Boys,
bellowed Uncle Vernon, and Harry was pleased to hear a definite note of panic in Uncle Vernon's face. Exactly, said Harry, looking calmly up into Uncle Vernon's large purple face. Sorry. It's a lot to remember. I'll have to make it sound convincing, won't I? What if I accidentally let something slip?
You'll get the stuffing knocked out of you, won't you?
Roared Uncle Vernon, advancing on Harry with his fist raised. But Harry stood his ground. Knocking the stuffing out of me won't make Aunt Marge forget what I could tell her, he said grimly. Uncle Vernon stopped, his fist still raised, his face an ugly puce. Okay, whoa. Did Uncle Vernon ever punch him before? Were there times where... No, so he was like going towards him to punch the ever-lighting crap out of Harry. Right, he's not... Where are we? There. But if you sign my permission form, Harry went on quickly, I swear I'll remember where I'm supposed to go to school, and I'll act like I'm normal and everything. Harry could tell that Uncle Vernon was thinking it over, even if his teeth were barely bared and a vein was throbbing in his temple.
Right,
he snapped finally.
I shall monitor your behaviour carefully during Marge's visit. If, at the end of it, you've moved the line and kept to the story, I'll sign your ruddy form.
He wheeled around, pulled open the front door, and slammed it so hard that one of the little panes of glass at the top fell out. Harry didn't return to the kitchen. He went back upstairs to his bedroom. He was going to act like a real muggle. He'd better start now. Slowly and sadly, he gathered up all his presents and his birthday cards and hid them under the loose floorboard with his homework. Then he went to Hedwig's cage. Errol seemed to have recovered. He and Hedwig were both asleep, heads under their wings. Harry sighed, then poked them both awake. Hedwig, he said gloomily, you're going to have to clear off for a week. Go with Errol. Ron will look after you. I'll write him a note explaining. And don't look at me like that. Hedwig's large amber eyes were reproachful.
Your Hedwig is moaning Myrtle.
Oh yeah, basically now. It's not my fault. It's the only way I'll be allowed to visit Hogsmeade with Ron and Hermione. Carrie Potter, Zary Potter, Larry Potter, Ellie Potter. 10 minutes later... Oh, look at him. The little guy's yawning. 10 minutes later, Errol and Hedwig, who had a note to Ron bound to her leg, seared out of the window and out of sight. Harry, now feeling thoroughly miserable, put the empty cage away inside the wardrobe. But Harry didn't have long to brood. In next to no time, Aunt Petunia was shrieking up the stairs for Harry to come down and get ready to welcome their guest.
Do something about your hair!
Aunt Petunia snapped as he reached the hall. Harry couldn't see the point of trying to make his hair lie flat. Aunt Marge loved criticizing him, so the untidier he looked, the happier she would be. Perry Plotter, fairly otter, Terry Sotter. That's so funny. All too soon, there was a crunch of gravel outside as Uncle Vernon's car pulled back into the driveway. Then the clunk of the car doors and footsteps on the garden path. "Get the door!" Aunt Petunia hissed at Harry. A feeling of great gloom in his stomach, Harry pulled the door open. On the threshold stood Aunt Marge. She was very like Uncle Vernon, large, beefy, and purple-faced. She even had a mustache, though not as bushy as his. In one hand she held an enormous suitcase, and tucked under the other was an old and evil-tempered bulldog. Okay, Aunt Petunia also.
Where's my daughters?
Roared Aunt Marge.
Where's my nephew Pooh? Where's my daughters?
Let me know. I'm going to try with that. She's also a caricature. Dudley came waddling down the hall, his blonde hair plastered flat to his fat head, a bow tie just visible under his many chins. Aunt Marge thrust the suitcase into Harry's stomach, knocking the wind out of him, seized Dudley in a tight, one-armed hug, and planted a large kiss on his cheek. Yep, that works, Carrie. Okay, good. Smeagol, in a way, yeah, it's Grandma Gollum. It's so true. Harry knew perfectly well that Dudley only put up with Aunt Marge's hugs because he was well paid for it. And sure enough, when they broke apart, Dudley had a crisp 20-pound note clutched in his fat fist.
Petunia!
Shouted Aunt Marge, striding past Harry as though he was a hat stand. Aunt Marge and Aunt Petunia kissed, or rather, Aunt Marge bumped her large jaw against Aunt Petunia's bony cheekbone. Uncle Vernon now came in, smiling jovially as he shut the front doors.
"Tea, Marge," he said. "And what will Ripper take?"
Ripper can have some tea out of my saucer,
said Aunt Marge, as they all trooped into the kitchen, leaving Harry alone in the hall with a suitcase. But Harry wasn't complaining. Any excuse not to be with Aunt Marge was fine by him. So he began to heave the case upstairs into the spare bedroom, taking as long as he could. By the time he got back to the kitchen, Aunt Marge had been supplied with tea and fruitcake, and Ripper was lapping noisily in the corner. Harry saw Aunt Petunia wince slightly as specks of tea and drool flecked her clean floor. Aunt Petunia hated animals.
"Who's looking after the other dogs, Marge?"
Uncle Vernon asked.
Oh, I've got Colonel Webster managing them,
boomed Aunt Marge.
He's retired now. Good for him to have something to do. But I couldn't leave poor old Ripper. He pines if he's away from me.
Yeah, she's like barely a real person. Not really feminine. Should sound more manly. Okay. Harry was bursting to say that he'd rather live in an orphanage than with a Oh, sorry. I think I jumped some. There we go. Ripper began to growl again as Harry sat down. This directed Aunt Marge's attention to Harry for the first time.
So?
Oh no, that was full on him.
So?
She barked.
Still there, are you?
Yes, said Harry.
Don't you say yes in that ungrateful tone,
Aunt Marge growled.
It's damn good of Virgin and Petunia to keep you. Wouldn't have done it myself. You'd have gone straight to an orphanage if you'd been dumped on my doorstep.
Like a pit bull. Okay.
St. Brutus's,
said Uncle Vernon promptly,
is a first-rate institution for hopeless cases.
I see.
Do they use the cane at St. Brutus's, boy?
She barked across the table. I'm going to do a little barky. Talking whale drinking through a hose. Yeah. Uncle Vernon nodded curtly behind Aunt Marge's back. Yes, said Harry. Then, feeling he might as well do the thing properly, he added, all the time.
Excellent. I won't have this namby-pamby, wishy-washy nonsense about not hitting people who deserve it. A good thrashing is what's needed in 19 cases out of 100. Have you been beaten often?
Oh, yeah, said Harry. Loads of times. Aunt Marge narrowed her eyes. Getting there? Not squeaky.
I still don't like your tone, boy, she said. If you could speak meetings in that casual way, they clearly aren't hitting you hard enough. Petunia, I'd write if I were you. Make it clear that you approve of the use of extreme force in this boy's case.
That's completely different. Perhaps Uncle Vernon was worried that Harry might forget their bargain. In any case, he changed the subject abruptly.
Heard the news this morning, Marge. What about that escaped prisoner, eh?
Okay, there's a couple of different versions of Aunt Marge in there. That was that Gollum, the one before that, and this one. It's like that? Okay. Kind of like that? Okay. As Aunt Marge started to make herself at home, Harry caught himself thinking about almost longingly, of life at number 4 without her. Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia usually encouraged Harry to stay out of their way, which Harry was only too happy to do. Aunt Marge, on the other hand, wanted Harry under her eye at all times, so that she could boom out suggestions for his improvement. She delighted in comparing Harry with Dudley, and took huge pleasure in buying Dudley expensive presents while glaring at Harry, as though daring him to ask why he hadn't got a present too. She also kept throwing out dark hints about what made Harry such an unsatisfactory person. A live translation? The first version was ridiculous. Yeah, it's an obnoxious character. It doesn't work.
You mustn't blame yourself for the way the boys turned out, Vernon, she said over lunch on the third day. There's something rotten on the inside. There's nothing anyone can do about it.
Harry tried to concentrate on his food, but his hands shook and his face was starting to burn with anger. Remember the form, he told himself. Think about Hogsmeade. Don't say anything. Don't rise. Aunt Marge reached for her glass of wine.
It's one of the most basic rules of breeding, she said. You see it all the time with dogs. If there's someone wrong with a bitch, there'll be something wrong with a pup.
At that moment, the wine glass Aunt Marge was holding exploded in her hand. Shards of glass flew in every direction, and Aunt Marge spluttered and blinked, her great ruddy face dripping. Oh, yikes. Less bubble mouth. Okay.
Marge!
Squealed Aunt Petunia.
Marge, are you all right?
Not to worry,
grunted Aunt Marge, mopping her face with her napkin.
Must have squeezed it too hard. Did the same thing at Colonel Thupster's the other day. No need to fuss, Petunia. I have a very firm grip.
But Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon were both looking at Harry suspiciously, so he decided he'd better skip pudding and escape from the table as soon as he could. Outside in the hall, he leaned against the wall, breathing deeply. It had been a long time since he'd lost control and made something explode. He couldn't afford to let it happen again. The Hogsmeade form wasn't the only thing at stake. If he carried on like that, he'd be in trouble with the Ministry of Magic. Harry was still an underage wizard, and he was forbidden by wizard law to do magic outside school. His record wasn't exactly clean either. Only last summer he'd got an official warning which had stated quite clearly that if the Ministry got wind of any more magic in Privet Drive, Harry would face expulsion from Hogwarts. He heard the Dursleys leaving the table and hurried upstairs out of their way. 2 or 3 more minutes left. Harry got through the next 3 days by forcing himself to think about his handbook of do-it-yourself broom care whenever Aunt Marge started on him. This worked quite well, though it seemed to give him a glazed look, because Aunt Marge started voicing the opinion that he was mentally subnormal. At long last, the final evening of Marge's stay arrived. Aunt Petunia cooked a fancy dinner, and Uncle Vernon uncorked several bottles of wine. They got all the way through the soup and the salmon without a single mention of Harry's faults. During the lemon meringue pie, Uncle Vernon bored them all with a long talk about Grunnings, his drill-making company. Then Aunt Petunia made coffee, and Uncle Vernon brought up a bottle of brandy.
Can I tempt you, Marge?
Aunt Marge had already had rather a lot of wine. Her huge face was very red.
Just a small one, then,
She chuckled.
a bit more than that, and a bit more. That's the boy.
Dudley was eating his fourth slice of pie. Aunt Petunia was sipping coffee with her little fingers sticking out. Harry really wanted to disappear into his bedroom. But he met Uncle Vernon's angry little eyes and he knew he would have to sit it out.
Ah,
Said Aunt Marge, smacking her... Oh, we're close to finishing here. I'm going to finish this paragraph. Smacking her lips and putting the empty brandy glass back down.
excellent nosh, Petunia. It's normally just a fry-up for me of an evening, with 12 dogs to look after.
She burped richly and patted her great tweed stomach.
Pardon me, but I do like to see a healthy-sized boy,
She went on, winking at Dudley.
You'll be a proper-sized man, Dudders, like your father. Yes, I'll have a spot more brandy, Vernon.
And we'll end it there. Because this only runs for an hour here on Facebook Live. Then it cuts it off, unfortunately.
Facebook Live.
On Instagram Live. Facebook goes a bit longer, I think. Thank you for tuning in. That was fun, especially rediscovering Dudley's Vernon Dursley's voice. That was very fun. Oh man, that's gonna bring me a lot of chuckles throughout this series for sure. Mentally subnormal it was, Kenton. Any questions, any thoughts while you think of, or write them down until they come up. A couple of things you can do. Follow my brother Mike Voth 1984 for some art. Follow Mark at yoc.creations for also lots of different artsy things he does. He paints. He creates earrings. What else do you do?
I play banjo.
Plays banjo. He's a man of all trades, except none of those are trades, and we don't work trades. Okay, what are some things you wrote down? Will you do double sessions when the books get larger? I don't know. I'll wait until then to decide on that. I doubt it, because who knows what'll happen by then. I'm still committed to this after this whole situation ends. I'm still going to be reading to you. B. Richmond, awesome job. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Darth Vernon. Thanks, Anita. What was that? I couldn't understand you while doing Tranche Bull. Okay, thank you. That's good feedback. I do want you to understand the words. Not them just bubbling and consuming all the words. Oh, Mark, right. Next interest should be on the banjo. Hey! Shout out to your banjo. Maybe you can play banjo.
Yeah, I'll have to try to learn the Harry Potter theme song.
Show us
It'll
fried
take some
chicken.
time.
Hey, buddy, come here. This is Dexter. Dexter's here. Love this hour of my day. Thanks, John. Thank you, Allison. There he is. Here's the little cutie. There he is. Okay, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Conk's Corner with me, Mark Dexter. We'll be back tomorrow, and we're going to continue on this book. Till now was a lot of previously on and having some fun with mean Dursleys. I bet something's going to happen on this last day to Uncle Marge. This is my prediction. Next time, something magical is going to appear or happen, and Aunt Marge will somehow get some kind of food on her or something like that. Okay, everybody. Got to send this to some good news. Yeah, that'd be fun. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you tomorrow again at 6 p.m. Thanks for being part of this. I enjoy seeing you every single day. Have a great night. Bye.